The blue pill, the red pill. I want to give you the GosPill.
All right, guys. So today we have a very special guest. We were able to squeeze him into the podcast because he has a very busy schedule. So we have my son, Noah Michael.
Hello.
So he's been really wanting to do the podcast, and he's been asking me. So I told him, okay, we'll do it, son, but you're going to have to write down the points that you want to talk about. So I gave him some assignments, and I went over his notes, and he actually wrote down several great things that he wants to talk about. So first of all, let everybody know how old you are.
I'm 11 years old.
How long have you been coming to church?
11 years old. 11 years.
He's been 11. He was born in the church. He wasn't born in the church, but he was born in a hospital, and then he was raised up in the church. So one of the things you want to talk about is growing up in the church. So how has it been growing up in the church?
It's been great growing up in the church, seeing my dad as an example and people in the church too.
When was the first time you really felt the presence of God, where you know, God, you're real? God, I feel your presence. I know I've been in the church for 11 years, since I was born, but God, I feel your presence. When has that been where you feel the real presence of God?
It's been several times. Even through stuff I go through, I will pray and I feel the presence of God.
So was there anything in particular that made you feel the presence of God? Maybe you're going through something difficult and you prayed, or you're facing a tough situation, or maybe just within your heart, you were feeling maybe an emotion that you're not used to feeling, and you prayed. And like, what made you want to pray to seek God?
There's been several things. Probably when there's people leaving the church, or I'm just feeling conviction for stuff.
What about your love for church? Because you wrote your love for church. So can you explain, like, what made you think of that, like the love for church?
I love going to church because if we weren't in church, we would be lost in sin. We wouldn't be praising God. I wouldn't be a pastor's son. It would be way worse.
So talk about your perspective. Like you said, in church, you come into church, you've been in church, like your perspective growing up in the church, because there's children your age who have never been to church, or they come into the church for the first time, kids your age. So what is your perspective on church? Because you wrote as a talking point perspective. So what led you to that thought of perspective?
My perspective of church, it just feels the presence of God. Seeing people grow in church and seeing pastors, it gives a good example to people who haven't seen it and been in church.
So would you say that has drawn you to grow a love for church?
Yes. It's made me grow a lot of love for church. I desire to be in church a lot.
Seeing people come into the church, God touch their lives, God, transform lives, and you see what God can do in the lives of people, and your life as well. Like you said, you growing up in the church, you feeling God, praying to God, God meeting your needs, and you feeling God in a tangible presence, meaning you feel God in your life. That's grown you into, I would say, a young man that has developed a love for church, to say, I want to be in church. Because there's going to come a time in your life where you're not going to be 11 years old. You're going to be 18 years old. You're going to be 20 years old. And at that point, you're going to have to make the decision of, okay, I'm a man. I'm a young man. Do I still want to go to church? Everything that I was raised in, I was born into the church, into the kingdom of God. Do I want to continue going to church, or I'm just going to do my own thing?
I want to continue coming to church because I feel like if I don't have Jesus, I won't be the same. And I hope people come to church and they have the desire to come to church like we do.
It's that love, like you said, for church, that as you grow older, your love for God and the love for God's church also grows with you, that draws that desire to say, you know what, I want to still be doing the will of God even later on in my life. Which, how would you say homeschool? Because for those that don't know, I know I've mentioned it before, but he's homeschooled as well. He's been homeschooled all his life. He's never been in the public school. He's never had lunch in the public school. Never had to deal with all the crazy stuff in public school. So he's been homeschooled all his life. Tremendous blessing. So how would you say you being homeschooled has played a part in developing you into a young man of God, into the desires? Because we talk about a lot of things that y'all express, how God's touched y'all's life, just in our daily conversation as a family, conversations that we've had as a father and a son, just things that you express, how God's touched your life. Would you say homeschool's played a big part in that as well?
Yeah, it's played a real big part. I feel like if I was in public school, it would be different with the influence of people who aren't saved. But if I was in public school, I would probably preach to people who weren't saved.
And that's very powerful. Because one of the things that you've mentioned as well is that you found your calling. I remember when you came to me and you wanted to talk to me, and you're telling me it was something serious that you want to talk to me, and I'm already thinking, okay, what did he do? What did Noah do? What did Noah break? What happened? Why does he want to talk to me? And it was a very serious conversation. And for those that know Noah, you know what I'm talking about. So it's like, okay, what is it? Well, what do you want to talk about? And just let people know, what was it that you wanted to talk to me about?
About being called as a pastor to go, I felt called to go preaching to the nations, to go preach in Africa.
So that's powerful, because at 11 years old, you felt God calling you to say, I want you to go preach to the people in Africa. What was there anything in particular that made you, aside from feeling the pull of God on your heart, that made you drawn to Africa or to be a missionary overseas?
Just to go to tribes and places that don't really have Jesus. And I just felt called to Africa.
Because I know in homeschool, y'all read a lot of books. We've mentioned some on the previous episodes on the books that we've read, and one in particular that you mentioned was Hudson Taylor. So, what was it about Hudson Taylor that really moved your heart for the mission field? Because Hudson Taylor wasn't called to Africa. Where was he called to?
It was called to China.
To China. So, what made you? Was it something that Hudson Taylor did that said, you know what, I want to have that same passion. I want to do the same thing Hudson Taylor did, but instead of China, I want to go to Africa? Or what was it that drew you to answer the call or to want to go to Africa? And what was it about Hudson Taylor's life that made you interested in becoming a missionary?
It was just powerful. He was raised in the church, but he never found the love for God. But he felt called one day, and he just changed his whole life, and he got sent to China, and he just went through a bunch of stuff, and he stayed faithful, sicknesses and trials he went through, and it was real powerful, the book, and it just really touched my heart.
So you would say, although you're not called to China, you feel like you could relate to Hudson Taylor because he was raised in the church like you were, and he wanted to reach a lost people, and you wanted to give your life to a tribe. So is there any particular tribe that you could think of in Africa?
No, not really, but I know there's tribes that don't really have God.
That's powerful because you said you wanted to be a pastor. So understanding you being raised in church, you being raised in church, you being a pastor's son, which, we'll get to that a little bit more in detail, but you see a lot of things and you've been through a lot of things because one, your father's a pastor, your mom's a pastor's wife, and you mentioned, within the church we see all kinds of losses. In the mother church, we build relationships, we see people leave, pioneering, being wanting to be a pastor, what it took for us to pioneer a church when it's just me, you, your brothers, your mom, our first outreach. You remember our first outreach? Everything that we did from the bottom, from the ground up, pioneering in our home, working with people. Y'all were here when we married the first couple in our house. Us working with them, then seeing people leave, come in, everything you've seen, the good, the bad, the ugly of pioneering. Yet something in your heart still says, "I still want to be a pastor." What is it that makes you still want to be a pastor? Because a lot of times people pioneer for the first time, they go through so much and say, I don't ever want to pioneer again. Or they hear the stories that I'll never pioneer. I hear the stories, I never want to pioneer. But what makes you say everything that you've seen, you would say, I still want to pastor?
The reason why I would just always want to pastor is because there's people that don't have God, and people need God. People that don't have God, they could go to hell. So I don't really care what happens in the church. I would just always pray for the best that happens in our church. And I just know that God can move in certain tribes that don't have Jesus.
That's powerful. So you would say, even though we've gone through so much, because it's not just me and your mom going through stuff, y'all face it as well. And I've even seen the tears that y'all have cried through the difficulties that we've gone through. So it's not just me and your mother that go through stuff as pastors, pioneering the church, but y'all are affected by it as well, because we've seen y'all cry and y'all go through stuff, and me having to explain, like, this is part of it, this is what we go through, and yet something within you says, you know what, it's still worth it all. It's like that one song, "You're worth it all." It's speaking of Jesus Christ. Jesus, you're worth me going through everything, and then you even wanting to be a missionary. You think of Africa. You have read the stories, and the books that they read, they're powerful because they explain their struggles. They explain the difficulties that they go through, them not having anything at all. And one of the ones that spoke to me, the one of the ones that I love the most, it's David Livingstone. How if you've never heard, you've never read, I encourage you to read his book. Read about his life. It is powerful because you read his life, and it's just difficulty after difficulty after difficulty, trial, and you think of a Hollywood movie of, okay, something, it's going to turn. His story's going to turn here, and he's going to have breakthrough, and awesome things are going to happen, and you expect this happy ending, only to realize that his whole life was just struggle after struggle. And we've read the books together as a family in our homeschool. Books have brought us to tears reading it, and it's just heartache. And we sit there as a family in a circle, and we're just quiet because we realize how difficult their life was. And so to hear something like what my son is saying, I still want to be a missionary. It is powerful. That's the greatest joy a father could have. I would rather have my son say, I want to be a missionary and to reach lost souls and touch a nation, a tribe, than for them to tell me, Dad, I want to be XYZ. The things that we normally hear from a average 11-year-old. But to hear that was the greatest joy as a father, for someone to, fly the banner of Christ into a nation or a tribe. So it's encouraging because they've heard all the difficulties that uh, these pioneers of the faith have gone through, all the struggle, and something within their hearts still say, I'm still willing to do that. That's very encouraging, very, very powerful. And that brings us to another point that you mentioned, speaking of missionaries and speaking of reaching other tribes, and just speaking of, the church. Can you talk about having friends from different countries at Bible conference? Because, Bible conference, we have the South Texas conference here, and then we go to the Prescott, but primarily the one here in South Texas. It's not far from us, so we go, and our children have been able to be a part of that all their life. Every year, we always go to the conference, and you want to talk about you've just been able to make friends from other countries. Who are they? What country? What did y'all talk about? What interested you in talking to them, and what drew you to build a relationship with them?
Just many things of them, knowing that I have friends that I can meet from different countries, and I could learn more about like countries. I have friends that are from Africa and different places, and I could learn more stuff that we talk about from missionary kids that talk to me about different countries. I just feel a joy of having friends from different countries that I know.
And so, what would you say that kind of drew you to want to become a missionary, or
Yeah.
what's some of the stuff that they talked about that fascinated you, or something interesting that they talked to you about?
Just about the works that people have done in Germany and different places just makes me want to also do that. It sets a good example to me that I just want to do it, that I want to preach the gospel in different countries.
So, how's your life been as the pastor's son? Has it been a disaster?
It's it's been a real great thing to be a pastor's son, not because not just because I know that that I think I'm higher of everybody, but I know just being a pastor's son just makes me feel good. Like I know that I'm a Christian, and my family are Christians, and I don't have to worry about anything that happens. I don't have to see my family fighting or anything. It's just I get real happy knowing that I have a family that raises me in the church. It's just real good to have that.
So, I know one of the things y'all mentioned before is, um, your brothers has mentioned it too, is y'all feel security. So, how does that make you? Like, what makes you feel secure knowing, one, that your parents are saved, they're pastoring? Like, what is it? What is it that you've seen? Is it something that you've seen, that you see that and you're able to compare and say, I'm glad my parents are saved, they're pastoring, because maybe a situation you see other parents, or something else that you've seen that makes you appreciate you being a pastor's son?
Yes, there's a because I hear about parents that are abusive to their children that they don't have a mother figure or father figure, and it's good to know that I have a family that is just saved, and I don't have to worry about not having a mother or father figure in my life. I don't have to worry about any fights happening. It's just real great not having that. It's just good to be in the church.
Yeah, and so, and the thing is too, you've y'all being pastor sons and pioneering everything that y'all have seen when we work with people. We've had people live with us. You've seen how we've taken in, you know, a broken family where the parents on drugs and their children are just lost as well, and them living with us. And you've seen, you think that played a part into it, and being grateful, knowing, man, that's I'm glad that's not my dad. I'm glad my mother is not like that. And then hearing our testimonies of things that we've been through, and to realize, you know what, I'm glad my parents are saved. I'm glad I'm a PK, pastor's kid, or a church kid.
Yeah. Hard to know that your kids go through that with their families that are dying from overdosing on drugs, having to take in families that are going through that. I don't have to know that my parents are going through that. That I have a mother or father that's about to die from doing drugs. I don't have to worry about that at all.
That's a blessing. And me and your mother having to fight through so much, because if it wasn't for Christ, that would have been us. So, like you said, having godly parents and not seeing us fight. We arguments. Yeah, we have our arguments. Yeah, they've seen us have arguments, and sometimes, you know, difficult ones, but they've never seen us physically, you know, attack each other, because we've dealt with people where that's the case, and they've been around situations where they know that's the case, because as a pastor, I'm having to deal with all these issues and all these problems. And it's, you can't hide everything from them. They're gonna know, and they're gonna know what's going on. And so you would say you're blessed to know that you have godly parents, and you're not having to worry about, you hear testimonies of the dad getting home drunk and abusing the mom, or the mom on drugs, and being, you not having to deal with that. You would say that's a blessing in your life.
Yeah, I'm happy that I don't have parents, like you said, coming home drunk, beating us. My brothers were beating my dad, coming home beating my mother. I see my father coming home with joy. No, I see that he's a Christian. I see that my mother's Christian. I'm not ever around. I've never seen my parents hit each other, not even once in my life, because they're saved. And I know it's always going to say that.
And I didn't pay him to say that. So, because you've heard me say it. I've never had affection for my parents. It was difficult for me to get affection for my parents. My family is not affectionate. By no means. It wasn't until I got saved that started actually being affectionate with my family, giving them hugs and everything. But you've seen that all your life, because that's one thing I've always said. My children are going to see me and my wife hug. They're going to see their parents hug and kiss and be affectionate, because I want them to have that sense of security in the home, where they could see, what, this is what godly parents do. They're not cussing at each other. They're not going crazy. But you know what? And if we do have disagreements, we're going to handle it the right way. And we're going to do it the right way and the godly way. So, what are your life goals as a pastor son?
Just to be a pastor, because I have life goals, not to be some famous person or anything. My life goals as a pastor's son is to be like my father, a pastor, or to be like other pastors in the church that are missionaries, or they're just real timely, powerful pastors.
Your goal in life is to want to be a pastor. And that's the greatest joy to hear, my son say, I want to be a pastor like my father, because there's many things that we face in life, even in the difficult moments, as they've seen, and for them to say, you know what, Dad, I still want to be like that, because I know as far as much, you know, difficult things that they see, they also see the good, and they see the good moments, and they see when we're having fun as a church and things are exciting, and we're just having fun in the kingdom of God, because we could easily look at the difficult moments, but there's also so many good moments that we experience. There are so many great memories that we have, that we've established for them, the good relationships that we've built, the long standing relationships, and we've done. That's one thing I've learned to do, especially with the help of my wife, is being more uh, outgoing, being more exciting. Because if it was up to me, I'd be at my house inside, reclusive. But she's helped me be more outgoing, getting excited for stuff, and also through her encouraging me, we need to do this for our family. We need to make it fun and make it exciting for everyone. And that's what I've done. And that's what's created the memories for them to say, you know what, I'm still willing to pioneer and pastor. And, my life goal is to be a pastor one day, because they've been raised in the church, as the Bible tells us. You raise your child in the ways of God, and when they grow, they will not depart from it. And that is our goal. The best inheritance that we could give our children is to raise them right in the things of God. And even when we go through difficulties and the undesirable moments, we teach them, this is how you handle this situation. Yes, we're having a disagreement, but you know what? We're going to seek godly counseling. We're going to do this because one day they're going to go through it. One day they're going to have difficult moments in their life, in their marriage. One day, if they're pastoring, and they're going to be able to go back and extract their memories of, okay, what did my dad do? My dad was a pastor. What did he do in this moment? You know what? He called pastor. He called his pastor. This is what I need to do, or this is what they did in this situation. This is how they handled it, or you know what? This is what we did for fun, and this is what we did that made me excited. So now that I'm pastoring and we have families, this is what we're going to do to make it exciting and fun for church, because church should be fun. There's a time for everything. There's time to be serious, time to, you know, have our hand to the plow and go all in. And there's also times that we have fun and we make things exciting for the families that come in, for the people that come in. And there's a balance to it all. And our goal is to show our family and our church, you know what, you could have fun serving God. That our children, because it's not just my son, we have a lot of youth in our church, that our goal is to plant that seed, that they would say, you know what, when I get older, I want to do the will of God, because I see how it's impacted my life, the life of others, and I want that for my life, and I want that for others too. So we close then. One of the things that you put on there, because I think your notes, everything that we're talking about were your thoughts. And as I was reading them, I was like, wow, these are really good thoughts. It's thought process, the things that I challenge you to do, to say, you know what, you write your own things on what you want to talk about. So everything that we talked about today are his thoughts, his notes. And as I was reading them, I'm like, wow, this is powerful. That you're even though you're 11 years old, we don't expect, you at your age to be a grown man. No, you're 11 years old. You live your life as a child. You have fun. You have your moments. But when it's time to be serious, when it's time to do the will of God and do what we're called to do, y'all step up and y'all do what y'all need to do. But also just knowing your train of thought, what you're thinking within your mind. And as you wrote these thoughts, it really encouraged me to say, you know what, okay, let's sit down, let's record an episode, because these are really good thoughts from you being 11 years old. And, you're a little nervous, but very, very good thought process. So one of the last things that you put is the longing for church. So what made you think about that? Or what made you say, I want to talk about the longing for church?
Like, whenever there's stuff happening, I always feel the longing for church. There's no other way to be happy except for church. If you're ever going through stuff, it's not worth drinking or getting high or any of that. You gotta go to church. That's the only way that's gonna make you happy, is through God and nothing else that the world will give you.
And that's absolutely true. And it just brings me great joy to hear all our hard work, our sacrifice, our effort, our labors, even though sometimes it feels like it's falling on deaf ears, because that's how kids are. You tell them stuff and it seems like they're not listening, but they are listening. And this is to every parent out there that's listening, whether you're saved, you're not saved, raise your children in church. Have them in church. You be in church with them as well too, because you are their example. You're going to lead their life, and the things that you do, they are going to want to do that as well. Whether those things are bad or good, your child is going to look up to you, and they're going to want to do what you're doing. And the best thing for you to do is for you to be in church, to raise your children in church, that you could have your child saying, you know what, I want to do the will of God in my life. And is it easy? No. Is it difficult? Yes. Is it worth it? Most definitely. It is worth it all, because here we are, experiencing the blessings of God, especially in our family. So, if there's anything else that you want to say, Noah, before we end, any words of encouragement, any thoughts, what you're feeling right now?
You just gotta stick in church. You gotta just believe in God and don't believe in the world. Don't try to find joy and happiness in the world. You just gotta believe in God no matter what you go through. Trials. Always have the longing for God and the calling to be a pastor.
All right, guys. So we thank you for y'all's time, and it was awesome, Noah. It was great. I really enjoyed this. So let us know what y'all think, guys, there in the comments. Any words of encouragement for Noah that y'all would like to give him, go ahead and drop it there in the comments. Let us know your thoughts. If you have any ideas for our next episode, go ahead, let us know. Make sure you subscribe, engage, guys. If y'all can engage in the comments, give it a like, a share. It really helps out the channel to, get the algorithm going, so it could begin to recommend to other people, because I believe this podcast is really going to bless people. Our goal is that it touches lives. It really helps and encourages people that are hearing that may be going through something difficult. And I believe, and my prayer is that this episode would help touch youth, even adults, touch people of all ages, especially someone 11 years old, 10 years old, 13 years old. And if you know someone that could be encouraged by this, share it with them, because the devil would love nothing more than to snatch our youth, to trick our youth into thinking that the answer's out there in the world, when the reality is the answer is in the church. And Noah is a living testimony of that God could touch the heart of a young man, even in the world. Even though he's homeschooled, he is engaged. He's out there. He talks to people. Anywhere we go, we're engaged with the world. We're not just secluded in the house. They're out there. They socialize, and they're able to make their own distinctions. Say, you know what, Dad, I talked to so and so, and this was what was going on. I don't want that for my life. I want to, and we talk with them, and we engage with them. We get their thoughts, and they're able to make that decision on their own. So our prayers and our hope is that you would be blessed by this. Someone his age would be blessed as well. That it would inspire by the Holy Spirit to just lead them into saying, you know what, I want to be in church. So We hope that this episode finds you blessed, and let us know what you think. All right, guys. Y'all have a good day. How you feeling now?